Coffee is the most popular beverage worldwide, its consumption being second only to water. More than 2 billion cups are consumed every day. So are we doing the right thing? Is coffee consumption beneficial or detrimental to our health? In the past, there have been negative connotations with coffee intake due to its caffeine content. Many myths were born, like reduced bone mass, insomnia, gastric ulcers. All of them were just myths. Recent research has demonstrated multiple health benefits of coffee consumption. So get your cup of joe, because coffee is the topic of today's episode. In 2019, in a review of 21 prospective studies totaling over 10 million participants, drinking 1 cup of coffee per day was associated with a 3% reduced risk of all-cause mortality, and drinking 3 cups of coffee was associated with a 13% reduced risk of all-cause mortality. Also, this study found the same protective effect in caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee. In 2017, a meta-analysis of human prospective studies showed that drinking both caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee was associated with a reduced risk of hepatocellular carcinoma, including in pre-existing liver diseases. Data from few studies, which were included in this meta-analysis, shows that increasing caffeinated coffee consumption by 2 cups per day was associated with a reduction of 27% risk. Increasing decaffeinated coffee consumption by 2 cups per day was associated with a reduction of 14% in the risk of hepatocellular carcinoma. Next study found that coffee consumption may offer protective benefits for postmenopausal breast cancer. Consumption of 4 cups per day was associated with a 10% reduction in postmenopausal cancer risk. Study shows a similar association for caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee, what may suggest a limited role of caffeine on breast cancer risk. It is therefore more plausible that the action on carcinogenesis is mediated by other coffee compounds. Coffee drinking is associated with a lower risk of colon cancer in women. A study showed that there was a 20% reduced risk of colon cancer in women who drank more than 3 cups of coffee a day, compared to those who drank 1 or less. Let's talk about diabetes. Studies showed that coffee drinkers are at lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. People who drink 4 or more cups of coffee daily have a 50% lower risk of type 2 diabetes. Let's discuss this research a little bit more. Global epidemic studies have suggested that coffee consumption is reversely correlated with the incidence of type 2 diabetes mellitus. The misfolding of human islet amyloid polypeptide is regarded as one of the causative factors of type 2 diabetes. Coffee extracts have 3 major active components: caffeine, caffeic acid, and chlorogenic acid. This study investigated the effects of these 3 major coffee components on the amyloidogenicity. The results suggest that all 3 coffee components showed varied inhibitory effects on the formation of toxic amyloid polypeptide, in which caffeic acid shows the highest potential in delaying the conformational transition of the human islet amyloid, with the most prolonged lag time. Cell protection effects were also observed for all 3 compounds. This finding suggests that the beneficial effects of coffee consumption on type 2 diabetes may be partly due to the ability of the 3 major coffee components and metabolites to inhibit the toxic aggregation of the amyloid polypeptide. What do we know about coffee and stroke? A large prospective cohort study from the US National Health of more than 83,000 female participants followed over 24 years observed a significant inverse association between coffee consumption and incidence of stroke. Next, very interesting Japanese study involving more than 82,000 Japanese adults aged from 45 to 74 years without cardiovascular diseases, also concluded that coffee consumption was associated with an inverse risk of cardiovascular diseases and cerebral infarction. And the last study about coffee and atrial fibrillation. A meta-analysis with more than 220,000 participants concluded that caffeine exposure was weakly associated with a reduced risk of atrial fibrillation. A dose-response analysis suggested that the incidence of atrial fibrillation decreased by 6% for every 300 mg per day increment in habitual caffeine intake. The authors concluded that it is unlikely that caffeine consumption causes or contributes to atrial fibrillation, and that habitual caffeine consumption may reduce atrial fibrillation risk. That's all for today's episode. Please subscribe to this channel and like this video. You can comment below on what topic you would like to see in the next episode. Please support our channel at Patreon so that we could make more evidence-based healthcare and medical knowledge videos.